Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sosa if you don't know me. In this video, I'm going to be going over the 3 biggest things I learned in my first year as a software engineer. So I hope you stick around and watch it. I might have a tip or 2 at the end for you so that you can take on your journey coming or learning about being a software engineer. So make sure to stick around. Before we get into any of the things that I've learned or my tips or tricks that I'm saving for the end, remember to like and subscribe so that you can get more videos like this in the future, and make sure to leave a comment down below of things that you want me to talk about in the future. Number 1, starting out is really hard. In some cases, a lot of people can feel like they have imposter syndrome where you don't feel like you're good enough to be in the position that you're in. And I felt like that all the time, especially in the position and the work that I do. It's a very senior level group where a lot of people who are in this group have been doing this type of work for years and years on end. And for me to be a fresh grad, just jumping into things, it was kind of scary. And I had this constant fear and not knowing what to do next, and having so many questions and feeling afraid to ask questions because I didn't want to take up people's time, and just feeling a lot of discomfort and being uncomfortable with not knowing things. Both having so much to learn in the sphere that I was working in, and then also being so inexperienced because it was my first job out of college. So it was this constant feeling of never being good enough and just never being comfortable enough. The thing is, being comfortable, when you're too comfortable, you're not going to grow to your full potential. You want to be in a place of discomfort. You want to be able to embrace the discomfort, embrace and learn in your discomfort. When you are uncomfortable, that is when you grow the most. That is when you step outside your comfort zone to figure out things and think outside the box. And that is where personal growth happens. So don't be afraid of new challenges, of new risk, of doing things that you think that you're not capable of doing, because you are and you can do it. It's just a matter of embracing that uncomfort and embracing being uncomfortable and using that to your advantage. Number 2, it's really, really important to be a part of the team. And even though this sounds really simple, a lot of times in the tech industry, people like to tout that the best way to get a job is to do 400 hours of coding, practice questions, and making sure that you're able to whiteboard, and making sure that you can be able to implement a data structure from scratch. And yes, some of these things are important, but I would like to argue that being able to communicate with people, being able to network, and having emotional intelligence, and just being a friendly all-around person to work with, and being flexible as a working partner, these things, these personal and social skills are so important to being an excellent developer or software engineer. And during the first couple months, you'll start to figure out the group dynamics and how you fit into the team, and who you can reach out to for help, and who's there to be your mentor, and who has some advice or information that you can be able to seek out. For me, at my company that I work at, they make sure that on every team, when you join a new team, you have a mentor or a buddy who can be able to help you through all the processes that your team goes through, all the onboarding work they can help you with. They're kind of your person, I guess, for a lack of a better term, but they're just the person that you can be able to lean on in those first couple weeks or month to be able to get a hang of things, because it's really hard to just jump into things and figure things out. I think my thing with being at a bigger company that I like versus being at a startup or something a little smaller is the bigger companies usually have some type of structure for new hires and some type of team building, mentorship there, where you're able to develop as a person, not only in your coding, but in your networking skills and building relationships. So for me, that was really important. And in those first couple months of me being on my team, it was a lot of me figuring out the different personalities of each teammate. And like I said before, figuring out who has what information and who I can lean on for what. Being able to develop these relationships are really essential, because these are your teammates that you're going to be working with on who knows what products or projects, and you need to be able to effectively communicate with with each of them, and not everybody's going to have the same type of understanding of communication. And so you have to be able to figure that out in the early days so that later on down the line, a year or two later, you're not having issues with communicating with your team members. The third thing, don't be afraid to ask questions. No one, and I repeat, listen to me, no one is going to know all the answers when they first start the job. Even the most senior level people, maybe one or two of them will know what they're doing, but especially when you're fresh out of college or you're a junior level position, you're not going to know all the answers, and that's okay. You're not expected to. You don't have a higher bar to attain to. You're there for your first couple months to learn and to grow into your position. So take advantage of that. Ask all the questions you can ask. Make sure, and a lot of people say to ask questions, but also make sure when you're asking questions, you're writing down the answers, because you don't want to come back a week later asking the same questions. You're just going to look kind of dumb, because if somebody's already explained something to you once or twice and you're going back to ask them the same question 3 or 4 times, that's an issue. That's a problem. So make sure that when you're asking these questions, no matter what it is, again, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Make sure that you're writing down these answers, taking notes or mental notes, whatever it is. And at some point, you're going to be tasked to do something independently of a team. You're not always going to be working on a team. So for me, I was asked to build a database with a front end framework connected to it so that we can be able to keep track of our assets. I was just told what the end product should be and that I should just take it as is and figure out the frameworks I should use, the databases I should use, and things like that. And this was a skill set that I had never have ever touched. In school, I'd always used C++, Python, and some other backend languages. And this project required me to be able to understand a bunch of front end framework as well as JavaScript, Node.js backend. I had to ask a lot of questions. I had to first figure out the features that they needed, what inputs and outputs would be, things like that, and just making sure that for every question I had a grasp on each answer so that I could go back, write my code, and then have a deliverable that is what they need. Or if it's not what they need, I can ask more questions, jot down some answers, and then come back with something better. So it's very important to ask questions so that you're not lost and so that you're not sitting around trying to figure things out in your head and wasting time for 2 or 3 days because you're too afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It doesn't matter where in your career you are always allowed to ask questions. And make sure to seek help even if you're stuck on something simple. For me, if I get stuck on something for more than an hour or two, I know that there's a problem and that I have to seek somebody out. And I swallow my pride, especially if it's something that's very simple and that I should be getting it, but for some reason I'm just not seeing it. I swallow my pride, walk over to my teammate's desk, and I'm like, hey, do you mind taking a look at this code? Because I've been working on it for a couple hours and I don't see the issue. There's nothing wrong with asking simple questions. It just helps everybody in the process. You're able to see from a different perspective, and you're able to get through your code and hopefully bring in deliverables because you're no longer stuck on that minor issue or big issue or whatever it was. So this last year of being a software engineer has been probably one of the craziest but most fun and most rewarding and eye-opening things I've ever done in my life. Granted, I'm only 23, so I don't have much life experiences, but to be in a career that I worked really hard for and according to my manager, to be excelling in the position, and for me to really love what I do, I think I really lucked out, and I'm very grateful every day to come into a job that I love and that has so much flexibility and where I get to pick and choose what I work on, and I get to work with some of the smartest people in my field every day. I'm literally in awe and I'm just so grateful. And so this year I've learned a lot. I think the biggest takeaway for me and the tip that I'm going to give you right now is just to make sure you love the process. Make sure that you're going into this for the right reasons or better reasons than just money, because at the end of the day, I get so many questions from people asking me, hey, how much do software engineers make? I hear you guys make 6 figures. I hear this and that and that.
this.
And it's just like, listen, first of all, there's a big discrepancy with how much you make and where you live. So in California, like obviously you're gonna get paid a lot more because the living expenses and the living wages are gonna be a lot higher. And so being in California and being a developer here versus being a developer in a place like Atlanta or Minnesota or Tennessee is gonna be very different because the cost of living are very different. But that's besides the point. Don't do this if you're just in it for the money. At least that's what I'm gonna say. It might not be worth it for you. And you have to think about that because again, you have to think about the process. Sometimes there were days where I was a ball of stress and just didn't know what I was doing and just felt so lost and couldn't understand anything, and I had a deadline that was coming up and I didn't know how I was going to make it to that deadline. There are going to be times where you doubt yourself, where you're crying because you can't understand how to implement something or you can't debug something. Speaking from experience, there are going to be days where you cry, days where you're angry and frustrated, days where there's so much bureaucratic red tape that you can't stand it, days where you are flooded with emails and flooded with meetings and a bunch of other things that go into this field beyond just writing code. If writing code is what you want to do, that's great, but also realize that in this position you have to be constantly evolving, constantly updating your skills, constantly learning the new frameworks, the new languages, the new tools. You have to be willing to learn every single day. And that's what I've done in this position. And I'm so grateful because I love learning. I'm a very curious person. So that's no problem for me. But you have to be able to understand the process and figure out whether or not it's right for you. If you're not the type of person who wants to have to keep up with a new framework or a new programming language every couple months, then maybe this position isn't going to be for you. You know, you just have to figure out what you want for you in your career. And for me moving forward, I know that I love writing code. I know that I love the process, even though that there are times that I'll cry and be angry and frustrated. I know that at the end of the day, everything will work out and I still love what I do, so there's no real issue. And I think for me now moving forward, I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do with my life beyond software engineering. If I want to continue being a software engineer, if I want to lead a team and go on the road of becoming a manager, if I want to become a lead engineer, if I want to go more on the business side and become a director of some sort. Like there are so many different pathways. Or if I don't want to be in the engineering field that I'm in, and if I want to do more front end, or if I want to do more embedded coding, like there are just so many different fields and specialties in software engineering. And then there's also different levels of it. Like I was saying before, if I want to become a manager, things like that. So there's so many things to take into consideration. And I think that this year has been really eye-opening for me to figure out who I am as a software engineer and how I get my work done. And now moving forward, it's going to be, okay, what do I want to do with my career? Where do I see myself going? And what does my 10-year, 15-year, 20, 30-year outlook look like for me in this field? So that's what I'm doing moving forward. I'm also... Applause. I'm going to be going to grad school and getting my master's in computer science. So that's going to be really awesome. I'm going to be doing that part-time with working because I don't want to give up my job. It's a great job, but I also really want to get my master's just to become a really, really solid engineer and be able to fill in the gaps that I have within my computer science foundations. Hope you liked this video. I hope you got a lot out of it. If there's anything else that I missed or that you want me to elaborate on, please leave a comment down below. Also, I'm starting an engineering coaching service type thing. So if you want some advice, or if you want resume help, if you want your LinkedIn to look better for recruiters, I have a link down below. You can schedule an engineering session with me and we can go over everything that you need. Hopefully I can help guide you in where you want to see yourself in the next couple of years in your software engineering career. And yeah, so the link to that will be in the description. But yeah, so I hope you like this video. Stay tuned for another one in the coming week, and I'll see you next time.